I don't think that's my fault. I'm just
No,
going to throw it out
you got
there.
auto muted. That's not on you.
That's
Yeah.
not my fault. Hello, people. Welcome back to an episode of the USL show. Something's going on with it auto muting me, and I don't think that's fair. Welcome back. It is good to see you all. Yeah, John, how are you? You surviving the big snow?
Yeah, got about a foot around here, but I'm living at least, and that's all that matters.
Ryan, you got the big snow and you live in the South. So it was basically the apocalypse for you.
Yeah, when I stepped out to the train this morning, it was 15 degrees when I had to walk to the train. Luckily, the wind wasn't blowing, but all I was picturing that time that I was basically Luke Skywalker in the start of episode 5. And I just couldn't recall the last time I had experienced temperatures that cold. But we made it through, and I didn't lose power all weekend, so that's a win.
I love to hear that. It was 8 degrees yesterday, which is cold for us. And there's going to be somebody that's like up north and being like, that's the softest thing I've ever heard in my life. They canceled school. Yeah, there was no ice. I saw zero ice on the road, but they still canceled school because there could have been. And you didn't know. Also, Meemaw, Governor Meemaw Ivey said it was a state of emergency. So why not cancel that bad boy? We don't have to make it up. Not my problem. I got paid. So, it's all good. We got a flurry. That's all we got. It snowed. I saw floating flakes for about 3 minutes and it was magical and none of it stayed. So that's where we are. We want to go ahead before we get into this episode. Thank our wonderful patrons as I accidentally exited out of that tab. So hear me filibuster for just one moment, but we do appreciate you nonetheless. Our wonderful patrons of Doug Brooks, Stephen Howard, John's Landlord, Don Garber, David Horn, Josh, Dylan Reed, William Lamb, Sandy Lester, Ryan Smeltzer, Matt Capill, Andrew Tallesley, Al the Hedgehog, Kunal Patel, MOS, NF Fresh 30, Tim Knox, Rian Lacara, Jeremy Churchman, Alberto Aguilar, Noah Telford, Michael Fuchs, John Fuller, Christopher Cohn, Frank Anthony, and John Hunt. Thank you guys supporting us and everything that we do. We appreciate you so much. All right, the governor's name is not Meemaw, but we call her Meemaw because that's our dear Meemaw Ivy. Okay, there's one. Not trying to dive us too deep. However, one of my favorites in commercials, just like political ads that was going, was there was when they were running for governor and all that kind of stuff. There was just one commercial that kept popping up that I never had sound on for. And Meemaw Ivy, Kay Ivy, is like, she's like 75, 80. And it's just her pulling a gun out of her purse and just pointing it. I'm like, Meemaw strapped, like for her.
I love the South, man. That just rocks.
So there's that. Hey, let's get into soccer news because that's what we're here for. The USL announces something that shocked everybody, which is called the USL Premier. Congrats. But there were some changes that are being made to the pyramid, some that were announced in their official press release, some that were later posted on to The Athletic by Paul Tenorio. So we'll talk about that just a little bit. But as we see, first things first is the stuff that was reported. The Premier League is going to be at the top, as we all thought, National League. The championship is going to be a National League single table, so no split conferences anymore. And League One is going to be regional. Now, they did not specify if it's going to be regional, quote unquote, like the USL Championship is regional with Western and Eastern, or if it's going to be fragmented more like USL League Two and W League, where it's very regional. They didn't specify that, but still, some changes coming to those leagues.
And I will say everything I've heard points toward the ambition, at least, to get League One big enough that it can be more of the League Two mold, which is exciting. There is a lot to unpack here. Maybe the starting point for me is with the Premier Division, where in year one, at least, it will be 14 teams. And what was confirmed, at least in the Athletic piece, is They're thinking 8 of those teams will be existing clubs, and you could probably pick from who you've got in the league already, the Louisvilles of the world. But then 6 clubs that are either expansions or, which I found fascinating, potentially an organization that exists moving over. I don't know what that means in the context of American soccer right now, but fascinating that that's the tack that USL is taking with this new division.
USL taking a team from MLS to join FC Cincinnati's back, baby. But no, I mean, having the, I guess, ambition to go to 20 teams at its full strength in the USL Premier. And I think from Tenorio's article, he had mentioned that the initial, I guess, pro rel of it all for the elephant in the room would be a 2 up and 2 down type of scenario. What I think will be very interesting is how they'll kind of redistribute some of the teams who get relegated out of the USL Championship, since that'll be a national division that you will have to almost like readjust the conferences or divisions down in USL League One every season, depending on which teams kind of go up and which teams are coming back down. But it's interesting just seeing the kind of plan being further put into motion for 2028, and hopefully they get the CBA signed, because that seems a little bit more pressing matter right now.
We'll get to the CBA side of that very soon, because that is a major talking point, as it always is. Ryan, that's something that you mentioned about readjusting the league as it goes around. Stuff that happens if we look into the English counterpart, which is what a lot of people in America point to, because, it's an English-speaking country. We understand it a little bit better. Where the National League North and South readjust constantly based on who goes up and down. Some teams will end up being in the North one year, and depending on who comes down, will be in the South the next year. If you're St. Louis FC, you're used to this anyway. You're in both leagues all the time. It's kind of the same for OKC Energy and FC Tulsa. So really, if you're a fringe team that kind of sits in the heartland, you'd probably be worried about this. If you're a Forward Madison, if you are a Union Omaha, if you are someone who's going to be coming up later, a Des Moines who is supposed to be joining the league, all those kind of teams, those are the ones that should be worried about the flip-flop back and forth of which league will I be in, which league, is it going to change from year to year? But if you are segmented, kind of like we are already, with a pretty strong east-west divide, you'll probably know where you're going to be.
Yeah, and it goes to serve the point about the complexity of all of this. It is concrete progress that we're seeing what we've seen today, and there is still so much more to do about what the system is going to look like, the financials, the stadium requirements, the sanctioning with U.S. Soccer about the how it fits in with the divisional rankings. Like, I don't think we know yet if there will be waivers or changes in the Pro League standards. That's a really big piece of this puzzle, in my estimation. So, yeah, that, again, one piece of much complexity that is facing down the USL over the next 2 years in the run-up to this debut.
And one thing that was kind of mentioned as well is that's going to be, like you mentioned, is starting off with about 14 teams and then expanding up to 20, whether that be via promotion or if they want to get outside teams, as they have mentioned. I think it was in Paul's article on The Athletic, which a couple people were like, whoa, that's crazy. Why is an outside team? Right now, if we're being really, if we're thinking about former USL markets that are building towards it, in North Carolina FC technically would be an outside team right now because they are no longer in the league structure. Same thing with OKC, formerly known as the Energy FC. They are going to be someone who's outside the league as of now that would still expand into Division I, Premier League, if that's something they want to do. Also, we've talked about it, John. You've written about it before when it comes to expansion fees and what that means for the club and means for the leagues specifically. And the USLPA talks about it. We'll get to that in a second. But they're not going to say no to, ghastly expansion fees to kind of line wallets a little bit. So if there is a major city that they can go after and dip into that market, why wouldn't they go after it?
Yeah, and a salient point there from John Fuller in the comments of how do you handle the expansion fee if an incoming premier side is immediately at risk of a relegation? I don't think we know the answer to that. And in my estimation, it might mean that there's a leveling of what we see of the expansion fee at each tier, because what's to stop somebody from saying, cool, I'm going to come into USL League One, I'll spend the money there because I'm paying a lower expansion fee, and then 2 years from now I'm in the Premiership. There's got to be some mechanism to incentivize that not happening.
And I think when Liga MX previously had expansion before, or not expansion before they got rid of their pro rel, that like any team that was brought up to, I guess, the Liga MX top flight, they like averaged their points total over the course of, I think, 2 or 3 seasons at the time. And maybe that's the incentive of an expansion team, that if they buy in, they get the spot in the Premier Division for 2 seasons guaranteed, and just say, hey, you're not relegated the first year, but you got to get up to speed and perform the next year. But I could also see that being a sticking point for the teams who would earn their way up, or who were the founding members, to say, I don't want to get relegated because someone else isn't pulling their weight.
Do you guys have anything else you want to say on this matter before I pull up the USLPA statement?
Go for it.
Okay. So I'm going to be sharing my screen, and it's going to have the statement there so you guys can kind of read along. But boy, did the USLPA not mince their words in one slide. And I'm just going to read it as it's on the screen. USL HQ announced the new Division 1 league structure today, quote unquote, USL Premier League. In the same breath, Alec Papadakis, USL CEO and owner, said, it creates a strong foundation for players while unlocking meaningful opportunities for stakeholders and investors. Let's be clear who those investors are. The owners of League HQ, including Alec Papadakis. This announcement is about unlocking opportunities for themselves. And while Papadakis claims to be building a strong foundation for players, players are literally sitting across from the table from them, fighting for healthcare, livable wages, and year-round contracts. A little tone deaf, don't you think? If this league actually cared about players, these professional standards would already exist. The league is promoting itself as Major League, but without true professional standards, it is no more than a house of cards. This isn't a foundation. It's a business plan powered by subpar contracts, missing protections, and players left to absorb the consequences. They've put out a lot of statements over the last few weeks and months. This one might be the most scathing that I have read from them, and coming at probably the biggest moment that the league has had in a long time.
It's a real moment of import for the league, obviously, but for the players within the context of this CBA negotiation, where they, as was laid out in the statement, are really fighting for a lot of important things and protections that I think we're all rooting for them to get, as the league touts what is an opportunity for investors, first and foremost. Because of the way things are set up, there just isn't a way for that to move on down and benefit the players in a concrete way. So that's why you need a collective bargaining agreement that makes sure that you do get some of the benefit for the players. And you think about health insurance, premium coverage, the minimum compensation package, all of those things are mechanisms to try to make that up. Because if this works out like USL headquarters is acting like it will, it'll mean bigger TV money, bigger audiences, more money coming in to everybody but the players.
Yeah, and it just, like, for USL to kind of like publish this today to, I guess, kind of promote the league and what they're trying to do, while still like neglecting their commitment to wanting to sign a CBA for the players, when we have a season that is very near reaching preseason of players reporting for camp, and we still don't have a CBA signed. It really just kind of came across as that the priorities of the league right now weren't really in alignment with how the players are wanting to get the CBA signed. They're wanting to play, and they're all asking for incredibly fair things to be professional athletes within this country.
And I wanted to point a little bit to a wonderful Backfield article that was published yesterday from good friend John Morrissey, where, by the way, if you're one of the people that scream paywall, I'm on a teacher salary and I pay for it every week. You can too. Okay. But I'm not going to go through all of it because you should read it all, right? But I think it's fascinating what John has, because what John you wrote about was the first time we've had someone speaking from the owner's point of view put stuff out into the public. We have yet to really have an owner's side, a front office side to this conversation. And you mentioned how much of a divide there is, where the front office side is saying things are going well, and the PA side is saying things are pretty dire right now. Things are not going the way they should be. And, our friend John over at Soccer Down Here brought up the point today, as it was released, of isn't that how these things normally go, where one side is going to say things are awesome, the other side is saying this is awful, and the truth is somewhere in the middle. But somewhere in the middle between awesome and awful is pretty bad. So I'm not loving the negotiations. As you said in the article, as it was quoted, the players will continue to play and not lock out if both sides continue to negotiate in good faith.
When the gap is that wide and it's November and you've got time before the season starts, I think that's understandable. When you're a month away from the season and there just isn't the concession towards, I think, what are some pretty basic asks on the part of the players, then it really does start to become problematic. And yeah, it's good to kind of refer back to the statement from the players, because I think it does underline a lot of, I don't want to say the hypocrisy, but the way in which the USL really wants to control the narrative of everything. We talk about this all the time, of how they try to manipulate this idea of constant growth in the USL and the rising tide lifting all ships, when in actuality, a lot of it is spin, and they're very good at spin. And that doesn't demean from what they have done for the game in America, but this is a very particular moment where they're putting out big ideas that still have a lot of work that need to happen behind them, and they aren't supporting the players in the way that would be commensurate to that effort.
And one thing that, again, just to kind of go to what your article is, and I don't want to hit too much because people should just read it themselves. One thing that I think that I kind of noticed when I read it, because things are getting close. Ryan, you pointed out, like, time's ticking. And we kind of talked about it a little bit last week, 2 weeks ago, whenever it was. We talked about it all again, which is typically the people who are on social media following lower league soccer tends to fall towards the we're supporting the players side of things, right? They tend to be more the pro player side. Half of the things that I saw on the Premier is here, you should be excited, was it's a little rich coming right now when you guys aren't willing to sign the CBA, which again points to what I was kind of talking about whenever we talked last. The USLPA has really put a stranglehold on the PR spin. And how important is that really when it comes to social media versus real life casual fans? Probably not much, but when you're alienating your diehard fans to try to appease the casual fans, I wonder what that does look like for the pocketbook.
No, it's a fascinating question, because I think the gamble is the people who are aware enough to be debating the USL CBA negotiations online are probably going to show up anyway if there is a deal struck. They might not be wrong about that, but I think in the long term, when you think about what the players are doing, they are laying the groundwork to change the narrative around this league, to keep these issues in people's mind on an ongoing basis. Because I think there is a strain of thought that there has to be structural change, and that's not going to happen if it is only something that comes up once every 4 or 5 years when a negotiation is happening.
Yeah, and this is something that for the long-term benefit of the league, you hammer out the details now and you get everything in place to start benefiting the players, because like the best time to like really put this in place is now. You don't want to get like 4 or 5 years down the line when you're 2 years into having pro rel and still not having that like risk the league like just not functioning at a professional standard. And you could very well see players say it's like, well, I can't really live on this. I'm not going to go and play in this league. I'll go play somewhere else, somewhere maybe not even in the United States. And it has a potential harm for the league long term, just for the short term gain that the owners might think they're getting out of this.
Well, and if you think about, and I'm struggling to think of names, but there have been a number of players in League One and the championship this season. Chris Hackenberg maybe comes to mind, Joey Farrell, who could have come back next season and been solid starters, and they've just decided to hang up the boots. Now, that can vary from situation to situation. Everybody values different things. But when you see 10 players who could be earning a living salary or close to it in the USL next season, and they are hanging up and not doing something else, I think that's a real indication of where we are at with this situation.
Or you see players like Cal Jennings moving to like Japan's third tier to play there versus potentially still having a top level job in USL.
But I think he's even an exception to the rule because, I mean, he's the best striker in the USL. Like, he's the only guy who could even get European interest, really, or Asian interest in this case. For guy number 6 on the Birmingham Legion roster, if you decide that maybe this isn't tenable, they probably aren't the reals biting for you at the other end of things in Europe or wherever else. It just is thorny if you're that guy in that middle range.
And we could talk CBA all day. We could, because I mean, we're going to keep hammering this home. And I've seen a couple of the comments that kind of come through, and this is not me criticizing those people, because I think one of the great things about podcasting, right, is that people can bring, especially live podcasting too, is that people bring different points of views and they're all valid. I'm willing to listen to the owner's side of things, which is why I thought it was so interesting in your article, John, that you got a front office side of things, because I do think it's fascinating. And there's things that the players, I don't know, are getting 100% right. I'm not in the negotiations. I'm not here to do that, right? But it is like, hey guys, like you are really skewing towards the players. You guys are really skewing towards the players. Yeah, man, that's who we watch. That's who I pay money to go see, right? I mean, that's kind of the whole thing. It's like if I go to an orchestra concert, as much as I love the conductor, if there's a conductor on stage and no musicians, what am I watching? Right? You want the people performing to get the money, get things done. And if you're someone saying, well, okay, but in League One and League Two in England, this is about what they're making too. That's great. And that's an established league. But this is supposed to be the second tier and possibly the first tier of American football, right? In theory, this should be something on the same level as the Premier League. We know it's not, but you get my point. First tier versus first tier, second tier versus second tier. You don't want players in the EFL Championship hanging up the boots because they could not get as far ahead in their career and they're struggling to make wages meet.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, kind of speaking of someone who's going to be able to make a move over to Europe, Pedro Guimaraes, we practiced this before the show and I still messed it up. Pedro is going over to Eintracht Frankfurt because Fabrizio Romano just cannot stop talking about USL defenders, I guess. But a second German player or a second player is going to Germany. And John, you mentioned it on the last show. Pedro is a player that isn't necessarily quote unquote standing out in the same way that Nick Marcanic did or a Cal Jennings did, or like we're seeing with a Taylor Davila, right? Where they're putting up gaudy numbers scoring wise. These are young players who have tangible growth about them that these German teams are taking a little bit of a punt on to develop.
Yeah, and what you love with Guimaraes is I mean, he's the opposite of a Bryce Jamison, for instance, where Jamison is all about the athleticism. You watch that guy for 5 minutes and you see physically why he was considered a top prospect. So much of it with Guimaraes is mental, and it's with the skill in the boots. He can play multiple positions. He just reads the game a couple steps ahead. So the fact that a team like Eintracht Frankfurt, who is fairly regularly in the Champions League and Europa League, looked at this kid and decided, we think he's really got upside to be something for a club of our stature. That is a feather in the cap of Guimaraes, first and foremost, and yet another example of Orange County doing everything right with the youth development. Guimaraes was very well considered in the LAFC system, I think an MLS Next All-Star, and they tell him, hey, we think you can get first team minutes. Now they have the reputation. If you are somebody who wants to move to Europe, there is no better landing spot in American soccer, not in MLS, nowhere. Orange County is the place to be. I mean, we talk about it all the time. It'll happen again in 6 months because that's just how it goes at this club. But yeah, love to see it on all fronts.
Yeah, and to echo John's sentiment there, like Orange County is able to market themselves to players as like, hey, we're not going to stand in your way of moving over to Europe, and this is the perfect place for European clubs to like for you to catch their attention and get on their radar and then make the move over there. And the fact that like Eintracht Frankfurt is a team like a few years removed from winning the Europa League, who's going up against Tottenham tomorrow in the Champions League as well. Like this is a perfect like location for a lot of teams to come into USL and like scout the players here and like move them on over into Europe is a really great opportunity. And I really think like the Bundesliga, like you see a lot of Americans over there already being successful at that level. And it's arguably one of the best leagues for USL players to move over to.
Hey, go ahead, take the example of partial Legion owner and USL men's national team player of the year this year, Chris Richards. He moves over, yes, from FC Dallas, but they were the premier academy at the time before Philadelphia Union kind of took the crown a little bit, and now Orange County has really taken that, if for my money's worth. He gets sold over there to Bayern Munich. He goes to the second team for a while. He goes on loan to oh gosh, where was it? It wasn't Heidenheim. Anyway, he goes on loan, gets Bundesliga minutes, and now he's over at Crystal Palace, and he's been a superstar for them. So you're looking at young players who can play maybe Bundesliga 2 minutes if they can go on loan, or these teams can play. They may have a 2 team in a lower division that they can cut their teeth at a different level, get a loan somewhere else, and then build up through the system. This is a great place for players to at least get a shot to move on elsewhere. Hoffenheim. Thank you, Ryan. So when you're looking at the growth that can happen here, it's great. I mean, you see Gallardo, who was sold a while back from San Antonio, and I don't remember where he was sold off to in Europe, but he's still playing like European minutes. He is starting right now. He is getting European minutes still, which is a part of the dream, which Orange County is selling their potential owners on. I saw that flowing around on social media. They have it on there as a part of their selling is, hey, we want to get players not just here and play for you. We also want to get our players to Rangers and Feyenoord, where we have partnerships and selling to other European clubs.
Yeah, well-oiled machine from top to bottom there.
Can I go ahead and throw out my be on the lookout one for them next? Someone that I saw with a Legion for a while that I really rate. I think Mateo Bunbury is going to get moved within the next year for them, either to MLS or to Europe. I know in Birmingham he was getting sniffed out by a couple of European teams, and if Orange County could continue doing Orange County things, he is a prime person to go abroad.
And they just signed Jameer Johnson, who I think he's 17 years old. He's got 9 or 6 goals and 18 appearances for the U.S. youth teams. He was considered a star in the Philadelphia system. Like, it's an embarrassment of riches, and it is self-perpetuating in the way that they reinvest that money, turn those guys into fees, and just keep it moving.
You guys ready to go on to the next topic? Hey, Super League's back. It is back this weekend. We didn't get a chance to really talk about the end of this season, not because we didn't really want to, but between CBA stuff, championship stuff, League One championship stuff, it kind of got pushed to the back burner. So let's give you a little bit of an update before we preview just a little bit. Sitting in first place, the new gals on the streets, it is Sporting Jacks on 25 points. Then it's Lexington SC, as they had a bit of a skid at the very end, drawing 4 straight matches going into the splits. And then it's Carolina Ascent, who's sitting in third, Dallas Trinity in fourth, Spokane Zephyr, despite selling or getting rid of, it seemed like the best players beside Hissy. They're still doing the dang thing. They're still around it. Then it's Fort Lauderdale. Then it's Brooklyn. Then it's DC Power, and your reigning champions, Tampa Bay Sun, in last with only 10 points through 14 matches. But I want to start it off with going to what's a pretty fun match, which is Sporting Jacks versus Carolina Ascent. Sporting Jacks is going to be buoyed by Ashlyn Puerta, Paige Kenton, but also with Meg Hughes as well in the attack. We pointed out from the very beginning that their attack was fun and it looks sustainable. Their defense is better than you think. Meanwhile, Carolina had a very shaky start to the season. They stabilized towards the very end once they kind of figure out how to use some of their pieces around them. To start off this season or this split, I think this is about as good of a matchup as you're going to get.
Yeah, 2 teams near the top of the table. I tend to think about the Super League as kind of having a big 3 right now, and these 2 are part of it for me. A fun battle of matchups between a Jacksonville team that's going to play with 3 at the back, really try to stretch the field against a Carolina side that's good about being compact, being pressureful. Our friend of the show, Nicholas Murray, had a piece about what every team in the Super League needs to change in the second half. And he really honed in on the finishing for Carolina. And that's something I've been flagging for most of the fall stretch of the year, where moving Mackenzie George to striker was something that really gave them new energy because she's great as a presser, because she's so fluid in her movement. But she doesn't really take up the positions you'd expect from a classic number 9. So I do wonder, does Philip Poole have a solution to that in this game, or are they just riding through it, trusting that pressure to unsettle what Jacksonville does? But yeah, fun matchup. I expect it to be the most exciting game from a pure visibility standpoint over the weekend.
And those 2 previous meetings between Jacksonville and Carolina Ascent had a combined 11 goals scored across both of those matchups. So it will be interesting to see if they can repeat that. However, like, Carolina coming into this game has not scored multiple goals in any of their last 5 games. They have kept 3 clean sheets in that, but like, there's only been 2 goals scored from the Ascent in that time. So it will be interesting to see if they, I guess, kind of return to having a high scoring fixture against Jacksonville in this one, or if this is kind of the trend that continues on as we start the spring half of the season.
And I'm trying to get American Soccer Analysis to load. I had it pulled up and the screen grayed out on me and I can't get to work. And I'm trying to reload.
Yeah,
I'm kind of down bad right now.
Feeling.
But either way, what I had written down, which was, like you mentioned, Carolina is one of the most underperforming teams in terms of finishing that we have going right now.
Yeah.
And it's not by a little, right? I think they are currently, if I'm remembering off the top of my head, 5 or 6 goals below their expected numbers, which some people say expected stats are stupid, in which this is what we're talking about is general trends of expected stats. They are well underperforming their expected stuff. Meanwhile, Sporting Jacks, I don't want to say that they're going full on 2024 Monterey Bay. That's not what I'm saying. But when you watch their matches, they're converting at a higher rate than you would expect. Ashlyn Puerta is a great player. You also have Paige Keaton, who is also a great player, and they have the ability to do so. But I wonder if there's a little bit of coming down to earth for Sporting Jacks for on the finishing side. And maybe if Carolina can get those finishing boots on, they can get it. You mentioned Mackenzie George. One thing we talked about with moving to striker is what we weren't really seeing was that freedom to kind of drop into spaces at the very beginning of the year. Do you want her to be kind of a second striker that can fill in space and you put another striker beside her? That might be the way to go. But either way, you want to take a risk like that by having someone like Mackenzie George, at the front of your line.
And I think there's a way to kind of thread the needle where let her lead the line in the press. She's got enough energy in the legs for it. And then when you regain the ball, she can drop off, she can be engaged and float all over. And you've got somebody who is just a solid presence, who's right in the back shoulder and getting into the box. And I don't know if Carolina necessarily has a striker in that mold. I don't know if they really filled that need over the break either, frankly. But that's picking nits for a team that has the clarity of identity and the real sense of tactics that should carry them throughout the second half.
Other matchup to look at here is Dallas Trinity taking on Brooklyn FC. A Dallas Trinity team who they were doing decently, and then it kind of sputtered a little bit. And then to end this split, they got hot. And they had 3 wins from their last 4. And they looked like a good team again. One thing that I was seeing here between expected numbers and just kind of underlying stats versus film, I'm really intrigued with what Soccer Analysis has going on here with Allie Thornton, because the numbers don't like Allie Thornton, but what I see on film, I do really like what I see out of Allie Thornton. And I'm not really positive what the disconnect between the numbers and what I'm seeing on film is, but it has led to Dallas Trinity being up in 4th. Meanwhile, Brooklyn has fell down to 7th. And even so, I still feel like there's a really good team with Brooklyn this year. Like Garziano is someone whom I've been really impressed with this year. She's someone who's been able to really pass the ball, been able to be really progressive in what she does. Catherine Zimmerman has done her thing. Same thing with Rebecca Cook, getting goals for Brooklyn. But maybe it's just not a total show going on up there.
That's the team where I look at Brooklyn and I almost think that they figured it out. You look at that final result of the last half of the year where granted it was against Tampa Bay, but a 3-0 win is a 3-0 win. And they really came into their own in terms of the defensive aggression at the back. I think Thomas Tingarina took half the season to figure out really what he wants this team to be. But getting Jennifer Cujo settled in as the number 6, figuring out that Sam Kroger can be a really unique left wing back, and then just having athleticism across the back line, that lets Brooklyn have a springboard to take the ball away and then get forward into space before the opposition can settle. That can play against Dallas, because Dallas, when you let them get into their low block, they are very hard to break down, and they've had struggles with transition all year long. Curious what they look like under Nathan Thackeray coming in as the new head coach. Riley Foster going away is kind of wild, but it's going to be a new look Dallas, and I wonder if they have a couple bad weeks as they, try to find the vibe again.
And especially interesting for how Brooklyn's going to start this spring half of the season is that they start their first 4 games on the road. And it is very crucial that they got that 3-0 victory over Tampa Bay. That's just the 6th time in club history that they won a game by multiple goals, and the first time they did it since May of last year. So if Brooklyn can take advantage of these next 4 games of Dallas, Fort Lauderdale, Spokane, and Tampa Bay before they can have their home opener again in March, I think we could see this team at least move up the table.
All right. Let's look over at Fort Lauderdale versus Lexington SC, where Fort Lauderdale they aren't quite who they were last year. But can that all be tied into Addie McCain? Maybe. But if you remember last year as well, Fort Lauderdale was not amazing until really the end where they got wicked hot. After that, things got going for them once again. You're going to be looking for Kayla Van Treek to kind of get some goal scoring for them. Elle Simpson as well. They haven't been able to bring that same kind of energy down the wings from a Jasmine and me like we came accustomed to last year. Meanwhile, you are going to be seeing out of a Lexington squad who has all the talent in the world. I don't really need to tell you their names, but I mean, you're looking at Adam McCain, Catherine Berry, Mackenzie Weiner, Shay Moyer. You can go on and on. Amina Ekic is up there as well. But they ended with 3 or 4 straight draws because they just were not finishing matches, and they knew that they were going to have a coaching change. I don't know how much that truly goes into it, but it certainly doesn't help. They're having to make a coaching change. Yes, they're just promoting their assistant coach, but still different. Was the off or this split time enough time for them to kind of recatch their bearings? Because the question on Lexington's side is not tactical. I think it's going to be all mental.
Yeah, I mean, that's my approach right now, is having this changeover happen at the break, having it be somebody who's been with this group all season long in Kosuke Kimura. It should make it a pretty simple move over from one regime to another. And Lexington has such a clear sense of how they want to play the game. They've made a couple interesting additions. I don't see them dropping off, and I don't really see a period where they bobble. And I think this first matchup against Fort Lauderdale is there for the taking. I don't know if United really knows what they want to be right now, whereas Lexington understands the sense of moment and knows, hey, if we can come out and get a win and break that draw streak and do it under Kimura, that probably is going to give us some momentum heading into the rest of the campaign.
And especially beneficial is they're still currently unbeaten on the season right now. They haven't lost since Thunderbolts was in theaters last May. So they have at least a spring forward to still go off of here. I know they've gone through 4 consecutive both teams to score draws, and they've had 8 games this year where both teams have scored. But I do think this is a beneficial chance to, I guess, really make a run at Jacksonville for that top seed in the playoffs coming up later on this season. They're still only a point behind them and have the superior goal differential too.
Anything else on this one? All right. Someone's going to get the comment from Frank Dolan in chat. And this goes over to Tampa Bay, whom they are going to be taking on Spokane Zephyr. What do they need to do to get back into this thing? Is it mostly health, or is it something tactical? When I watch Tampa Bay, they don't look as bad as they do as comfortably last in the Super League, but they are also highly deserving of where they are. I don't know what's going on with them. It just feels like everything they did last year in terms of pressing fundamentals, cutting down half spaces, intercepting and higher spots, and letting their goalkeepers kind of just block shots and sometimes be good passing options. They're not really doing it this year. And I don't know if it's because they don't feel like the players can't, or if they've just lost confidence. I'm not sure which one it is. Meanwhile, Spokane, they lose a lot of players, but Hissey is absolutely her. Hope Hissey, she is blocking everything. And I don't know. It's so bizarre watching them because they are just letting Hope stand on her head and just do it.
Yeah, I mean, backing up to the Tampa Bay thing, that was a team that really hung their hat on being in your face with the pressure last season. And I think a lot of the pieces that made that work are still there. If you think about Nacello on the wing, Carly Gimona helping her out, and Jordan Listro as an anchor. But Listro in particular, through the pivot, had that partnership with Jade Moore down the stretch, that those two players were among the best two-way center mids that you could find in the Super League. losing more hurt. The back line became a little bit thinner and got a little bit older. And then the goalkeeper position, Sydney Schneider just hasn't been up to snuff so far. She's in the basement by the advanced stats. And we spent a lot of last season, whether it was Ashley Orcus or someone else, praising the goalkeeper position for this team. So just a little bit less sharp, a little bit more mistake prone, and you don't have the solidity where it counts. Spokane is interesting on the other side because they're very pleasant to watch. Like, they're working through the midfield. They've got some really technical pieces through the middle, and then they just can't control games. There are flashes where you think, okay, I see the vision. This is a real playoff team. And then everything you said, Kayla, where you need to rely on the goalkeeping. I want Spokane to just level out a little bit, find that happy medium, find what the balance is, and see if you can't start to climb this table a little bit more consistently.
And at least from Tampa Bay's perspective, their one win on the season they had was a road victory away at Spokane. So they have beaten this team before. They need to get that result kind of back to really turn around their season.
Scalar is on mute.
Any final USL Super League thoughts before we move on?
Just staying with Spokane for a second. Sophia Braun is a Argentine international. I think people know she's good, but we don't pay her enough attention for being very good. And I'm going to try to do more of that in the second half.
I'm just excited to talk more Super League again. I really am. I've been really going through the withdrawals, to be honest.
This last weekend in particular, I really could have done with some Super League.
How about some US Open Cup?
That works.
One of these days, Legion will be in the US Open Cup, and I'm so excited for it. One of these
when
days.
you had posted that in our Discord, I got pulled into other work stuff today, but I thought of the Michael Scott scene from The Office of I love inside jokes. I'd love to be a part of it sometime.
Yeah.
But, with this abbreviated structure, I think it has led to weirdly more in like regional games that I think are a lot of fun. I'm trying to pull them up. I think the star-studded one that everybody is going to be looking at is going to be Portland versus Vermont, which I think would be a lot bigger headline news if we can guarantee that Portland can have a away contingency. I'm not sure what kind of away section they will be granted, if any, because, they don't have to give one. Vermont doesn't. But if an away section is gifted to Portland, that is must-see TV that's going to happen up in Burlington.
And in a very literal sense, because it's on CBS Sports, like must-see TV. The fact that they decided to put a Vermont Green game on real television rules. And that, I think, says everything about why this partnership with the broader CBS array of networks, as bad as they might be in other ways these days, it's good that they are highlighting American soccer.
Yeah, and Vermont, it was still, in my opinion, the best story of USL from last season. Their run to their USL 2 championship, which, by the way, USL 2 did announce their division structure as well today. But that was one of the best stories that USL had on offer last season. And we all experienced just how great Portland Hearts of Pine was to see in person, and just how much the sport, at least in the USL circles, is growing within New England. Like when Vermont basically had the matchup and they finished the post on Blue Sky with New England, I was just like, yeah, this is what the early rounds of the Open Cup is just all about.
Another one I'm circling is going to be one that happening down here in the South, which is going to be, hey, go ahead, take that Greenville highway through Brevard and then take it up to Asheville, North Carolina, because Asheville is hosting Greenville again. And that was a great match last year where a lot of people were like, oh, this Asheville defense is legit, which if I'm remembering correctly, Asheville did not concede a single goal until the playoffs last year.
That's unreal.
That includes the U.S. Open Cup, by the way.
You think about that team that Asheville had last season, like Johnny Fennick, he's a regular in League One. Brennan Creek goes on to be a regular starter for the Switchbacks before the season is over. Giannis Lalline is starting for the Red Wolves in the playoffs. Like, that team had talent that was instantly picked up. They've got multiple guys that signed for this season coming up in League One. If they have anything like that team coming back, they're going to give the Triumph a real challenge again.
I'm going to see if I can find the rest of their roster because they were so good last year. It was disgusting. But it's going to be running it back. And I'm really excited to see that one. There's other fun ones if you guys have some that you want to throw in before I rattle off some more.
An intra-city derby between Steel City and your USL champion or reigning USL champion Pittsburgh Riverhounds is something that at least caught my attention. And El Fiorito taking on a Sacramento nearby.
Yeah, they played last year, and it was a close game given the resources that El Fiorito has compared to the Republic. So excited to see that come back. I naturally have my eye on Indy against Des Moines. Are we going to get a third straight year of the Menace kind of doing their old man Galacticos thing? I hope so, because that's just fun and brings good attention to the Cup. But yeah, should be interesting. Indy tends to be, outside of the 1 year where they made the semis, they're historically pretty bad in the Open Cup. So that's upset alert.
Can I be? I'm the hater of fun. I hate what Des Moines does with bringing the old guys in. I really hate it because I understand they can't get everybody who played on the team the year before back into the squad, but something about it just feels a little icky that those players don't get to definitely get a shot. But I don't know.
I think the more I've realized that League Two is just kind of like, here's some college kids doing their thing, I'm a little bit less mad about Des Moines doing it because to a certain extent, all these rosters are kind of a random assemblage of guys. Like, Des Moines is astroturfing for sure, but let them have it. If it's one team doing it, whatever.
And hey, if Des Moines actually gets up to playing an MLS team in this competition, wouldn't it be really funny if like the MLS old guys beat like a current MLS team?
There's also Little Rock is taking off FC Tulsa, another Little Rock team who made a little magic in the Cup last year. Also, when they took down Birmingham, they also had a very good back line as well last year. That's a fun one for FC Tulsa to draw. And I think that Little Rock is hosting. So let's see if they can make a little bit of magic there. It's not that bad of a drive. I remember going between Little Rock and Tulsa and saying this is a lot closer than I thought it'd be. I think it was like 4 hours. I don't remember it fully, but it was closer than you thought. So that's a fun local-ish one. Let's see. We also have Flint City Bucks taking on Ford Madison. That's a good one. I think it'll be a ton of fun. Laredo Heat, who's now part of League Two, is going to be taking on El Paso. I'm sure that Phil is already just kind of just preparing for a little bit of doom because El Paso also notoriously great in the Cup. So we'll see how that goes for them with a pretty good Laredo Heat team. Just in general, just a lot of fun matchups going on that I'm pretty stoked with. I think it's a ton of fun. I also desperately want to know more about Badgers FC, like facing off with Charleston. Who are the
That was the one that caught my eye. Like every year you get somebody real random in the Open Cup, and Badgers FC is the one that I'm excited about this year.
Are we now? I know Ben Clements is somewhere. Can we get a Raccoons versus Badgers shirt? Because I am buying it.
But one of these times we're going to push hard enough for the merch that Ben is just going to have to do it.
Please. Any other Open Cup matches that are catching your eye? Okay. I know it's early. We don't know the teams yet. But is there a team that you're circling on saying, okay, I think they can make a little bit of magic? Last year, I didn't think they'd go as far as they did, but I did say I thought that the Red Wolves were a team that were built for the Cup with just how defensively they were kind of set up to be. Is there a team that we're kind of early circling on, just being like, okay, this is happening?
I mean, I think a Portland team that has added 3 decent center backs and has that depth this season and we know they've got the attacking depth. Like there's a real chance that Terzaghi is just their go-to in the cup. That's a team that has the talent, at least, to make some noise.
I'm going to look towards at least teams that could avoid, like, I guess, other USL opposition as they continue onward with the Cup. With the winner of Vermont, Portland, I think it's very likely they're going to get matched up against a Hartford or a Rhode Island in the next round. And correct me if I'm wrong, or at least on how the format is going to line up. So I'm going to look more towards the Western Conference, and I'm going to back I'll go with New Mexico. I think could make a really decent run with the Cup just from if they can avoid other USL opposition until they get towards, I guess, the later rounds.
We good on US Open Cup before we hit some quick hitters with some free agents? All right. I have a couple of free agents I want to just throw out there. First things first, Bruno Lapa returns to the U.S. and it's going to be really interesting as FC Tulsa makes their first major splash of this offseason. And what a heck of a splash it is to put one of the better 8 or 10s that you have seen in this league into an already stacked midfield.
Well, that's a little bit of Raheem Summersall shade, but I realize that's a sicko pick for a star player.
That's
Bruno
fair.
Lapa is transformational. Like this is a 2-time all-leaguer, someone that Caleb Sewell had around in Memphis. He knows what he's capable of. He adds to the sense of formational variability for this team because he can be a number 10 through the middle, breaking lines, doing his classic Bruno Lapa thing. I also like the idea of him kind of playing underneath Taylor Kahera next to Jamie Weber in a wonky front three. Talk about a dynamic attacking group. But yeah, Lapa is the sort of guy who's dynamic enough to change a game in a moment. Tulsa maybe had that caliber of player. I think Calhera is maybe a different breed than that, but Lapa adds a new dimension for what they're going to be able to do because we know the defense is elite and now the attack has a different gear.
What else we got?
Augie Williams going from Pittsburgh to Hartford.
I am super interested in this one because Augie wasn't Augie in Pittsburgh. He wasn't the guy that we thought he would be. He was still good. And what he was, okay, I say that. I talked about it at the USL final. I talked about the playoff run. What Augie Williams offers you off the ball is as, if not more important than what he offers you scoring wise. And especially with what Hartford has been kind of built on, which is these kind of wing play where maybe you want more of this hold up player that can again hold up play and distribute the ball on to someone making runs past him. He seems like a perfect striker for what Hartford has built. Is he going to be your 10 to 15 goal striker still? Maybe. But in terms of fit, I really like this for Hartford.
There was that stretch down the end of last year where Mamadou Dieng was long gone and Kyle Edwards had to step up and not be the super sub anymore and be that number one guy. And I thought he did admirably in attempting to do so, but he just didn't have the same effect. I think Augie, in that sense, represents a real upgrade for this team. He gets them closer to where they were at their best form. It's going to be a little bit of a different look than the absolute transition dominance of Dieng, but I don't think that's a bad thing. Like everything you said, Kaylor, about his ability to duel and hold play up, that lets Machine Galina have room, that lets Emmanuel Samadia have room. It just makes sense within the framework Brendan Burke is trying to build.
By the way, do we know with Audrey Berry? He just kind of showed up for like 2 weeks.
No. Yeah.
And just disappeared.
He and Marlon Hairston have not been announced yet. I kind of thought both would be back, but we'll see.
Because that'd be interesting. I kind of want to just go off the rabbit hole of assuming that Audrey Berry's in Hartford just for a minute. He could be somewhere else, but I just want to go on the assumption really fast. Where do you fit Augie and Aji Berry on the same squad? Because I assume you want to have them as two strikers. Do you possibly see them moving to more of a 3-5-2 and have them play off of each other and drop your wing backs for your wingers? But I also am a big Anderson truther, so I don't love that for them. But what would you do?
I mean, what Brendan Burke decided last year was, Haji Berry, you've got a nice spot on the bench, and we'll bring you in for long substitute appearances. And given what we saw, I mean, I think that's his level right now until proven otherwise. If he does end up coming back, I think he could be a good late game complement to Augie for sure. But I don't know if I'm trusting him enough to change the whole formation.
What other transfers do we have that we have kept our eye on?
I've got a slight sicko one, and that's Ryan Betcher going to Fort Wayne.
Okay, I love this one. I really do. This is one that I really, really like.
Yeah.
I love what Fort Wayne is building from absolute top to bottom. Bringing him in after he was borderline all league for Union Omaha, to slot him straight in is awesome for Fort Wayne.
When I did my big free agency big board in late December or whatever, I wrote about Betcher with the assumption of like, oh yeah, he'll definitely be starting in the championship somewhere next year. Like he was that obviously above the level for Union Omaha. So the fact that Fort Wayne is getting him, and you think about the tactical fit, like he is perfect at the front end of that team with the size and the skill and the ability to play multiple levels. That's a coup of a transfer for Fort Wayne.
Oh my gosh, Betcher and Healy in the same midfield together is disgusting.
And I feel like I need to slow the brakes at some point because Fort Wayne isn't going to come and stomp on the league, but they are building the roster in my favorite kind of way, where it's like under the radar guys who, if you dig a little deep, you're like, oh, that guy rocks. And I don't know if having 11 of those is something that actually makes you a winning team, but the vibes are immaculate.
They're creating the team in the aggregate.
Yeah. I'm really fascinated because I mean you're dead right, John. And we said this last week where I feel like every single team is going to win the league, and you can't stop me from believing in every squad. But Fort Wayne has me a different kind of excited right now than these other teams. And I don't know if it's coming off of this is an expansion team and they're going to be confident or a competent level of confidence that I'm getting, or if I think that they're just going to be good. I'm not sure which one it is, but either way, I'm excited.
They feel like a playoff team for me. I'm feeling safe about saying that already.
Another two that are to League One squads: Simon Fitch leaving Richmond to go to Spokane, and also Dominic Gasso going from Detroit to Boise. I want to start off with Gasso because I think really the only lasting memories that a lot of players or a lot of fans have of Gasso is he scored a banger versus Pittsburgh to ruin their season, and they haven't really thought about him since. But he's still a good young, emphasis on young player, and getting someone who's going to be at the heart of your midfield and letting Nate Miller get his hands on him, it just feels like this is going to be a resurgence to what we really thought he could be after, I think that was 2024.
Yeah, it might have been 2023 even. I can't remember.
Yes, no, you're right. That's when Pittsburgh won. Yes, 2023. Thank you.
But he kind of fell off the face of the earth after that point, despite the fact that he was a perfectly decent role player, as he was not even 20 at the time, I want to say. So now you move him to Boise, where essentially he's learning under Charlie Adams. Like, I think that'll be the way they're doing it. I suspect he might start just because he's got the fresher legs. We'll see what gives with that. But having a mentor like that, who's been around the block, been at the biggest teams in this league, that's going to be huge for Gasso's development. And League One always felt like his level anyway, and that's not a knock against him, but somewhere where he can just get minutes and learn on the fly feels necessary.
And then the other one, Fitch, who goes and is going to be probably the right back backup.
I
It depends on
I
what
was
you want.
debating this with Lucky Opara. I know.
With Lucky, I mean, Lucky, we talked about being borderline all USL at one point last year. It was a debate, but I really rate Simon Fitch as well, where that's going to be a fun battle going in for Velocity Camp this preseason.
Yeah, and I think it was positioned kind of the same way last offseason, where Lucky and Javier Martin Gil were somewhat in competition, and Lucky really took that position by the scruff of the neck eventually. But Lee Wiedemann isn't afraid of saying, hey, we've got competition at these spots. So good for them. That's a kind of a classic Spokane move.
Now, if let's hope that Simon Fitch does not leave the same impact of Heel, which is, they forget about him and put him on the roster anyway, and they have to deduct themselves for 3 points. But we'll see.
Well, hey, speaking of the beneficiary of those points, Westchester, in a kind of Fort Wayne-ish fashion, flying under the radar, but really recruiting heavily out of New York area colleges. Daniel Burko is the one I wrote primarily about because I think people in the know about college soccer and the MLS draft class thought that this guy had legit potential to be an MLS player. From what I understand, he had offers in Norway's first division. He's 6'3", he's fast, he's big. He knows how to throw his body around already, which matters in a league like League One. He's not going to score as many goals as JC Obregon. That's just a fact of the matter. But he maybe is going to add more to what Westchester wants to be in year 2 with a clarified vision.
I'm interested with what Westchester's doing because I think when you're looking at their roster, comparing it to last year, you're like, ooh, this is a downgrade, but also it can't get worse. Like, I kind of hate to say that, but what they're doing is they're going young, and this is what you've seen work in League One. You go young, you get players who did not quite cut it at the MLS level, whether it's because and I cannot pronounce his name. He's at Sporting Jacks right now. There's a J, a lot of A's, different letters. It's Swedish. It scares me.
Escalanian,
yes.
Escalainen, yeah.
Thank you. And they said, and with, I think it was Flyover Footy mentioned the fact that he didn't start for St. Louis because he was an international and would have taken up international spots. They couldn't use his talent because he was international. That Burko, someone who might be suffering from the same thing, could have gotten a chance. I don't know if he has American citizenship. I know he played in New York, but I don't know if he has American citizenship. If he doesn't, then that's someone that MLS teams couldn't waste a spot on, quote unquote. He's going to fall down to League One, and he's going to be the beneficiary for it. League One is going to be a home for those kind of guys, and what Westchester's doing feels a lot more sustainable from what the history of League One has shown us.
I just keep mentally framing it of, like, what did Chattanooga do right last season? Invest in guys who were young and fast and energetic and were willing to fight for the badge. And they bought in under Scott McKenzie, who was a good motivator. And yes, they had the tactical backing and they were unbelievably organized in low block. But there is an element of that that's replicable. And Westchester, to me, it seems like they're taking some of the right lessons from that.
I also just believe that I think Scott McKenzie can make me almost competent as a player too. I like, what a guy. I have a random Legion thought because we're an hour 9 into this.
Please.
I desperately need Legion to sign Al-Hassan onto this team, because if they don't, this will be the first year in the team's inception that they have not had a Ghanaian on the team, and I don't know what I would do if that streak ended.
You need to sign him, and then you need to get Mohamed from Portland.
Double names only. This seems like a fun FM
thing.
We only sign double name people. Yeah, apparently Romario Williams looks like he's in Legion camp right now, which him being a sub option or a possible striking duo with Ronaldo Damas is fascinating at least a fun thought experiment.
It's kind of a Stefano Pino thing to me, where like 3 years ago I would have been very excited about the idea of him and Namas, but maybe less now.
I said the same thing with Pino when he signed with Birmingham, and then he was like really good because he just
I guess that's
doesn't
true.
stop scoring.
Yeah.
It's like I was like, I don't know about Pino. Then he scores 4 goals in one U.S. Open Cup match versus the Red Bulls. So like, I don't know. Pino's internal. He's back in the 4th division of Brazil, and I have no doubt that some championship or League One team is just going to sign him and be like, come back, and he'll just do it because that's what he did last year with Union Omaha, and it was great.
I was gonna say he's gonna be in like Corpus Christi in August.
Oh, Eamon Zayed with Stefano Pino. Now that is soccer heritage.
Hey, they got their striker today with Cerritos coming in, which I didn't expect them to get somebody with that level of historic production in League One, let's say. Like he can move without the ball. He's very slick on the dribble. He's a good finisher. A different profile of forward than Eamon has typically chosen for his other teams, but I like it at least.
Yeah, I mean, looking at what they also got as well, which is Dietrich is coming back, Lingua, which we didn't really talk about before. He's going there as well. He's getting a little bit of the NoCo band back together. But you guys mentioned it as well. Eamon he's just so good at talent evaluating on the cheap. And I think that you're going to have guys that he's going to say, guys, come to Corpus Christi, play for me. You know what it's like to play for me. And as opposed to last time, you'll get paid. I can guarantee you will be paid. So, I mean, that seems like an easy selling point. What else we got before we wrap it up for the night?
Well, since we've got a Boisean in the chat, I will add one more on top of Gasso, that Denis Kostyshin coming in is crazy to me. I can't remember if we talked about this last time. I don't care if we did, because I'm still like, I at least argued that he was on the fringe of the all-league conversation when he was part of the El Paso Locomotive. What he gives you is a creative presence from the right, a set-piece threat, everything in between, is so distinctly above the level of League One. Like, he should be a championship starter. And that Nate Miller said, hey, come here, sold him on that project. Yet another example of Boise just doing everything.
Oh, sorry. I have, and this is another thought that was definitely posted on social media, but I'm just going to throw it out there anyway because it just makes me laugh. Tsumi Shonumi. I always mess up his name. I feel so bad. He is the 3rd player to go USL to Crawley Town back to the USL, and I'm really confused on why it keeps happening. It's the 3rd one where they just go over there, Crawley signs them, and then they just come back to the USL. But what a get by Louisville. They do this every year where they have a really quiet off season. They might make one big name splash, and that's kind of it. And then you'll kind of look at the parts out and be like, ooh, how are they going to replace that? And then they sound like a Toomey, and it's like, oh, okay, never mind. And you look at their roster, and it's still disgusting on what they have as a team. And you remember that they are still indeed just Lou City. So anyway, yeah, third Crawley, USL to Crawley to USL player in the last 2 years. So that's just something to watch. If you sell a player to Crawley, they'll come back in about 2 years. Anything else for us? We all good? All right. How about some final thoughts of the afternoon? John, what you got?
Boy, okay. So there was a movie that no one saw that came out called The Testament of Ann Lee, where Amanda Seyfried, who you may know from Mean Girls, played the founder of the Shakers, like the religious sect known for cabinets, essentially. But the thing about this is that the music of the movie, it's kind of a musical about like migrating and founding a cult in the middle of nowhere in Pennsylvania. But all of the songs are like modernization would even be wrong, but new takes on classic Shaker hymns, and it's just amazing, and I kind of can't stop listening to it.
Weirdly related somehow. The school
Let's
play
go.
happening in my school is Mean Girls Junior, the musical.
Mean Girls
So-
Junior is so funny. Like as a concept.
Like, it's there. It's a musical. It's a musical theater thing, and it's Mean Girls. And so, weirdly, somehow that relates. I can't believe that I managed to shoehorn that one in there, but I did. Okay,
Excellent
so
work.
John, I am just fascinated. It's just modern takes on just old hymns,
And
or
modern would even be wrong. It's like new arrangements of classic hymns. It's worth a listen, honestly, if you're even vaguely fascinated, because I can't describe music and I like it.
okay, I'm looking it up. All right, Ryan, how about you?
Yeah, I guess we'll keep it with the theme of just things I've been watching lately. At the start of the year, I was looking through like my letterbox on like I saw that only like a quarter of the films that I've watched all time were from before 2000. So I'm just trying to like fill in some of the decades prior to that. And I guess I've gone through like a real like a Western kick lately, and I've watched the Fistful of Dollars trilogy. Hey, it was like Clint Eastwood's like first ones, and yeah, the film that everyone says is the best of the genre with The Good, the Bad, the Ugly. Yeah, it lives up to the hype. So I guess I'd recommend seeing that. And John would appreciate that. I saw High and Low yesterday as well.
Yeah, boy. Banger. Yeah, all-time classic, if you ask me. And I will say on the Western thing, there's really nothing better than like Clint Eastwood standing in the desert shooting some bad guys.
I mean, the scores from this is just like really, really good. And I didn't realize the score they had at the end of like the Modelo beer ads was basically the end score from The Good, the Bad, the Ugly
100%,
for the shootout.
yeah.
And I was just like, oh, like when it started, I was just like, I've heard this before. And it took me a second to place it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I taught at a band camp this year, and their whole show was Western, and I had to listen to that one part of the ba da da da. I had to listen to that for like a week straight, and I was like, I can't imagine being the teacher who has to do this all year long, because I think I would lose my mind. I just think I would lose it. I had something. It was almost interesting. So we have still sticking with music here. We were requested to have my jazz band play at a thing, and they're like, we need you to have at least 30 minutes, maybe an hour's worth of music. We need it in a month, which asking teenagers to do that's kind of crazy. So I started finding random pop tunes and just saying, you guys can solo over this. And I found a really fun arrangement of Redbone, like the Childish Gambino song, set for jazz band. And I mess with it heavy. It's so good.
That's awesome. That feels like it would really take to a jazzier approach.
It's great. Oh, it's fantastic. I was like, listen, kids, just don't sing words to it. Just kind of go with it. Like do your thing. I just I don't think there's actually anything bad in that one. So, but I was like, still, let's not do this. And I finally have a gym membership. So I'm going to be trying to just like better myself, which will be great. It's about dang time. And not to end on a note that is somber or anything, but love each other, be kind to each other. The world's crazy right now. Just love each other, family, and all that kind of stuff. This too shall pass. But stick together, people. Stick together. So that's about it for the show tonight. For the first and final time, here's Alan's voice.
Thank you for watching another episode of the USL Show. The The USL Show is now proudly part of the Protagonist podcast family. Please go to protagonistsoccer.com to check out more work. Thanks for stopping by. We'll see everyone again next time.